There's a few games on my top 100 list that kinda scare me, not because of the games themselves, but rather their place in the culture and the fan base which surrounds them. I mean, have you seen Undertale fans? Of course you haven't. They're too busy posting about Undertale to leave the house. Metal Gear as a series is on that list, but Snake Eater might be near the top. I personally know people who would toss their firstborn into a volcano just for Kojima, and that's all thanks to Metal Gear Solid 3. But after finishing the first two, it only makes sense to look at the third. I want to know why people consider MGS3 one of the best games ever made, and if it's really still worth your time today. So, let's find out. The original version of Metal Gear Solid 3 was very similar to the first two Solid games that came before it. You're given a mission to stealthily sneak around and complete objectives, a mission where all hell breaks loose if you're caught by some guards. It even sported the same over-the-head camera from the last two games. It wasn't until 2005 Subsistence that we were given a more traditional 3D camera, a camera that drastically changed how Snake Eater feels to play. Compared to the overhead view, this camera feels more immersive, and I found myself feeling more in control. It made things like first-person aiming feel less jarring, as your camera doesn't need to change from a radically different perspective. Despite this being added in a re-release, it feels like this was always the way the game was meant to be played. Even though we're given a new view, many of the old systems make a return. Guards still have different levels of alert, we still have menus for weapons and items, cardboard boxes are still here, first-person aiming returns, and you can still use lewd material as a distraction, just like the Shadow Government does to you on a daily basis. I was also happy to see the tranquilizer gun make a return unchanged from Metal Gear Solid 2, but why would somebody fix something if it isn't broken? This is all mixed in with some new systems, like CQC, which can quickly incapacitate enemies at short range, an expansion of the costume system from MGS2 turning into a whole camo system, more ways to use the environment, guards can now be interrogated for info, and there's a new healing and hunger system, just to name a few new features. Snake Eater is not what I would call a revolutionary sequel, but rather an evolutionary one. It takes all the aspects from the last two games that worked while forging its own path. There's plenty of new secrets to find and systems to explore, all while feeling familiar to returning players. It's exactly what a good sequel should be. However, out of all the changes, I actually think it's the environment which makes the biggest impact, considering all the new systems are influenced by our journey into the jungle. While a majority of our time in the first two Metal Gear Solid games was spent in angular man-made structures, most of our time in Metal Gear Solid is in retro Russian jungles, one complete with traps, plants, animals, and enough moisture you can almost smell Snake's swamp ass through the screen. Kojima said both he and fans wanted a game in the jungle, and it's easy to see why. Compared to square man-made environments, an outdoor jungle provides a much more dynamic play space. Guards can move up, down, and around uneven terrain. That terrain also provides its own set of banes and boons. There's trees for cover, grass for hidings, openings to sneak through, and spike trap holes to fucking die in. I wonder who taught you that one, Ivan.
Your government has betrayed you.
These outdoor environments are complemented by more standard Metal Gear Solid indoor environments in the form of tunnels and whole-ass military bases. We really have all the environments covered. MGS has always been about making the environment itself a character. Shadow Moses and Big Shell feel like real and distinct places. The jungle of MGS3 is no different. The layout is a little nonsensical and the jungle graphics themselves don't compare with what we have today, but it's about the vibe, not the reality. The vibe of Snake Eater is a retro one-man army experience, one half John Rambo, one half James Bond, and I think it pulls that off really well. You're dropped off with only the bare necessities. You're given directions to go do your James Bond spy shit, but then it's up to you on how you make that happen. You gotta make a plan, learn the land, source food, patch up wounds, find weapons, and clothe yourself. Notice how I didn't say bathe? Yeah, no wonder so many Smash players main this guy.
I'll bet if I kissed you, you'd taste like a wild beast.
Things like clothing, wounds, and food are all their own distinct gameplay systems, something that was pretty ahead of its time. We see light survival elements like this in games pretty often these days, but in 2004 this stuff was pretty novel, although not all of these survival systems were created equal. Between the food, camo, and curing system, I find the food to be the most well implemented. On the surface, it's really simple. Snake's a hungry boy who needs to scarf down a scale glizzy from time to time. If Snake gets hungry enough, his combat efficiency will fall off and his aim will become significantly worse. His little rumbly tumbly can also alert guards if you're sneaking around. You can avoid this by eating, but not all foods are created equal. Since Snake is a distinguished gentleman with a refined palate, certain foods just don't work as well as others, on top of certain foods being downright poison. The cherry on top of this is the food you gather by killing animals or picking plants rots and spoils in real time. If you gather a bunch of food on Monday and you don't play again until Saturday, your food will be all rotten. That's a setback, but not all is lost. Snake will have been resting all that time, so he'll be back up and ready to go with full health and stamina. You can also avoid meat going bad by capturing animals alive in cages, only killing them when you're ready to eat them. If that wasn't crazy enough, this time and food system affects the enemies too. Everybody knows about waiting for the end to die, but there's other places time comes into play. In a few areas, you can destroy the enemy's food and ammo supplies. Doing this will make it so they have only one magazine of ammo to use. Over time, the guards will grow painfully hungry as well. This will make them easier to take down and they'll eat any food that you throw out, even if that food is poison. The food and time systems are really detailed, but a lot of that detail can be completely missed. That's what I call a Kojima trademark if I've ever seen one. The injury and camo systems don't seem as well implemented. In concept, I love the idea of Snake sustaining injuries on the mission. He's out there on his own, so he needs to set his own bones, sew up his cuts, and put some goop on his burns. Sadly, in practice, it doesn't impact the gameplay in any meaningful way. The most mechanical impact injuries have is lowering your maximum health. That's it. It's not like breaking your arm makes you worse with guns, or getting a cut on your foot makes you hobble around. I understand stuff like that could be annoying, but this is kind of the worst of both worlds. Sure, the penalty for letting wounds go untreated is a small sliver of health, but then why have the system at all? It feels like a missed opportunity to lean further into those survival elements. On the other hand, the camo system has more impact. There's definitely areas where using certain camos is absolutely worth doing. You can feel a difference between a terrible camo rating and the best camo rating. Guards can see you way easier if you're dripped out like Moon Knight chilling in the grass in comparison to a green camo. My only complaint was it felt like I could hover around 70% most of the time and be perfectly fine. Maybe it's worth going for perfect camo if you're going for European extreme, but on a normal playthrough it doesn't emphasize the system enough. Although I think these complaints kinda miss the point of all of these systems. From my perspective, most of the changes from previous games and added systems are here to increase immersion. To a certain extent, the camo, food, and cure systems are here for roleplay. Sure, Snake's bones don't really break and impact things, he can't starve to death, and you'd be fine with a half-decent camo on, but interacting with these systems pulls you into the game just that little bit more. I found the ritual of changing camo, eating food, and checking for injuries did add something to the experience for me. It made me feel like Snake, even if it wasn't as mechanically impactful as it could have been. Overall, the gameplay of Snake Eater is not a radical departure, but I think it's the best of the original 3 Metal Gear Solid games. It takes all the systems and mechanics from previous games and refines them. It then adds additional aspects that feel like no-brainer add-ons. It's the first game I think that you could enjoy for the gameplay alone, but then you'd be missing out on one of Snake Eater's best aspects. Before talking about the actual substance of Snake Eater's story, I want to talk about the way that it's presented. The first thing that stood out in comparison to previous games was the cutscenes. Everything from the pacing to the shot composition to the camera movement is phenomenal. Kojima always wanted to make movies, and this is his most movie game yet, all the way down to recreating his very own James Bond opening, with a song that bangs so hard it puts some James Bond themes to shame. My apologies, William Eyelash. Cynthia just did it better. It's a good thing the cutscenes are entertaining because there's an absolute shitload of them, especially at the front. It feels like the first hour you only control Snake for a few minutes between codec calls and cutscenes. I'm gonna be honest, this opening had me a little worried. I know this series is known for cutscenes and codec calls, but I felt like MGS2 went a little overboard with it, to the point where it felt like I couldn't play the game without getting nagged. I'm gonna absolutely hate MGS4, aren't I? In MGS2, I often felt the story and the gameplay were at odds with each other, which is a problem that I didn't feel in MGS3. After the first hour, it finds a much more even balance between gameplay and narrative. Cutscenes happen when they make sense. You meet a new guy, here's a cutscene. You run into the boss, here's a cutscene. You're spying on the enemies, here's a cutscene. They exist to emphasize the big moments in the story, and they're all well done. This leaves codec calls for more minute details, and even then, it's typically only if you call these people first. This is also a big departure from Metal Gear Solid 2, which had more calls than your unemployed buddy has on Discord in the middle of a workday. That's not to say that the codec is worthless. You'll still get calls with worthwhile information on a pretty routine basis. There's an absolute boatload of dialogue that you can have in these codec calls if you choose to call them. This means a curious player can learn an encyclopedia of weapon knowledge from SIGINT, while others can decide to only talk to these people when it's required. The balance of cutscenes, codec calls, and gameplay makes for a game which flows more naturally than the first two did, although the great cast of memorable characters certainly helps with that too. The likable core group of allies and Snake Eater is really what kept me coming back. In the fight against the evil USSR, your crew of good guys consists of Snake, Major Zero, SIGINT, and Paramedic. And while Eva isn't technically in that group, she's still fighting the good fight, kinda. You could argue there's really no good guys in Snake Eater, but we'll get there. The rapport between this cast made checking in with them entertaining. It reminded me of the opening mission from MGS2, where Snake and Otacon felt like two dudes who went through a lot together. They knew how to play around, but they could also be serious. Half the reason I disliked switching to Raiden was because the bro chemistry in that opening mission was so good. Snake Eater's interactions between Snake and the rest of the cast remind me of that opening chemistry. These people are here for you when you really need it, but they're also here for world building and entertaining interactions. I mean, half the calls you make with Paramedic, you're just shooting the shit about old movies. It feels like these people are real people with real relationships with each other. On top of world building, these codec calls are used to shape Snake Eater's unique tone. A tone which is less serious overall and not afraid to be campy as hell, just like old James Bond movies were. Something that actually gets brought up by name in the game. Oh, you little meta goblin, you.
Meta.
Yeah, so...
I hate meta.
During a codec call, Snake explains why he doesn't like James Bond, and the British Major soys out about it.
What exactly don't you like about James Bond? I mean, is it the fantastic gadgets, the cars, the guns?
Major,
Snake, wouldn't you like to have a gun shaped like a pen?
what good is a pen gonna do me in the jungle? I'd look like a fool.
Then what about a snake-shaped gun? You could make it look like you're grappling with a giant snake and then get a shot in on the enemy while they're distracted.
Okay, now you're being ridiculous.
It's a ridiculous and completely unnecessary conversation to be having with a dude who's supposed to be preventing an international disaster. The whole conversation pretty much only exists to have a funny moment and a tongue-in-cheek wink at the audience, while teaching us just a little bit more about these characters. I would describe Snake Eater as a whole to be a pretty funny experience. The previous games had some stuff that I laughed at, but I was never sure how much of it was supposed to be intentionally humorous. Here, there's really no doubt some of this stuff is played for laughs, while still maintaining who these characters are at their core. Snake is written to be extremely focused on the mission, and that's used to comedic effect often, with my favorite moment happening during the final escape when Snake tells Eva, "I need you." She thinks it's a romantic moment, but this bonehead is just thinking about how he needs her to fly a fucking airplane.
I can't fly the wig by myself.
It was also at this moment that I realized Naked Snake is me. He's got an autistic obsession with weapons, constantly repeats things in the form of a question because he wasn't listening, doesn't have a single clue about what's going on with modern movies, he's too focused on the grind set to lay pipe even when the huzz is practically begging for it, and he's emotionally unavailable to women.
Does it have to be one or the other? Love or hate?
Between a man and a woman? You bet.
Yeah, he's just like me for real. The main cast of Friendly Faces and Snake Eater would fit right in on a Friday night sitcom. Fuck The Office spinoff, give me a Snake Eater version of Police Squad. So that means MGS3 is a comedy, right? Oh no! While a good majority of Snake Eater is spent doing goofy things like watching Ocelot mean mug and spin his guns for 58 minutes. Okay, that's pretty cool. Okay, why are we still going? Stop. Cut it out. It's okay. You can stop. It's not cool anymore, dude. Stop looking at me like that. Just cut it out. While there's a lot of lighthearted shit in Snake Eater, there's a dark cloud that lingers over the entire experience. Snake isn't just in Russia to blow up a robot designed by an over-caffeinated 12-year-old. He's also here to kill his old mentor, the boss, and anyone that gets in his way. This means taking out the members of Cobra one by one, each of whom are extremely close to the boss, but they don't carry the same emotional weight to Snake as they do to her, partially because they're like if Ash's Pikachu joined ISIS. Most of them come out, scream their name, and then fucking explode. They're another thing on the long list of ridiculous shit in Snake Eater, but these guys aren't just here for comedic relief. They all represent emotions that are brought into battle. The way that I read the game, Snake is slowly killing off all of his emotions until he doesn't bring them into battle anymore. It's his journey to become the ultimate soldier, one who gets in, finishes the mission, and gets out without being bogged down by emotions. 2-second spoiler questions, so plug your ears if you haven't played the games. Lore Masters, did these dudes purposely lose like Mark Coleman in 1999? It's really the only way that the story makes sense to me. Otherwise, I feel like these guys would have killed Snake with their superior skills unless the boss filled them in on what had to happen. If you know, please comment because I'm very curious about that. We see a little bit of this emotionally numbing journey in our conversations with the crew and Eva throughout the game. Snake is routinely second-guessing himself. He knows he needs to kill the boss. He knows she's an enemy of his country, he just can't wrap his head around it. She was a good woman, she was once a hero for her country, so why would she betray it? Why would a good person all of a sudden become an evil one? Why would a good person all of a sudden start doing bad things? The answer to that is explained with complicated lore over like 40 minutes of cutscenes. Even though the game's 20 years old, I'm not gonna spoil what that is. Finding out exactly why things might not be as they seem makes the ending hit like a ton of bricks. I beat this game over 3 times in my life. Hell, the last 2 were back to back, and the ending still hits like a freight train. All of Kojima's games are about some part of the human condition. MGS1 questions why we need weapons of mass destruction. MGS2 questions how we can find ourselves in the digital world, while MGS3 asks what does it mean to be a hero and who decides what those standards are. I think it's the tying of personal mission and national duty together that makes the plot of Snake Eater work so well. Snake's country and his love and commitment to that country need the boss dead, but there's no way for him to put his love for the individual to the side. This woman taught him everything he knows. He loves her in a way that he can't even put into words. Although considering we see this man raw dog snakes down his throat, I'm not sure that's a super high bar to clear. Another aspect that made this story hit hard for me is the foregone conclusion set up from the front. There's no way for the story to end without one of them dying. If you've played the last 2 games, you know that from the minute the Snake Eater mission starts, the boss has to die. It's why I wouldn't recommend this game for newcomers to the series because it takes some of that experience away. It's easier to relate to Snake when you know the outcome and you know what that outcome means. It's easier to ponder what will happen just like he does. does. It all culminates in one of the best boss fights ever. It might not be the most mechanically intensive, but I've never played one that has so much weight. It's a boss that you don't want to beat, but you know that you have to. It takes place in a beautiful arena, and it starts silently. It's just the sounds of Snake and the boss having a showdown that they know is going to be their last. In these moments, her codename The Joy shines through as she feels alive in the thrill of battle one final time.
Found you. Run quick. Let's see what you're made of.
To me, this is the moment which showed Kojima's biggest leap as a storyteller. The lead up to the fight is some of the best setup in the game. You can see and feel the emotional bond that these two shared. Once the fight begins, he lets the sound of battle be the soundtrack, only pulling in music after a few minutes, culminating in the fantastic title theme. Once the fight's over, we're given another short moment between the two, as Snake stands over her conflicted on his duty, and then Kojima waits for you to pull the trigger, ending her life and causing the once white flowers to turn red before her horse comes over to mourn her death. This is cinema. Snake Eater isn't a perfect game, but this is a perfect moment. And if you haven't experienced it, you should. You should also turn in that gamer card, because I'm here to deport you to Normieville. It's over, pal. To me, Snake Eater is like heavy drinking and watching Black Lagoon with the fellas, and while you're coming in and out of a blackout, your buddy hands you a good old hit of the spice melange. As the walls melt and the world spins, the Hat Man throws on some old James Bond movies. Then the next day, you and the boys attempt to piece together what the fuck you even saw last night. Oh yeah, and in the corner, one of your best friends is dead. Metal Gear Solid 3 is all of the good and bad elements of Kojima cranked up to 11. Stupid on the nose naming conventions, overindulgently long cutscenes, pissing your pants, an unashamed love for hot babes, over explanation of minute details, extremely detailed systems, hidden interactions everywhere, and a deeply meaningful personal tale hidden underneath 15 layers of psychotic insanity. It's not a perfect game. It's not even my favorite game, but it's a game I think everyone should play. It easily belongs on the list of the top 100 games ever made. It's easy to see why this has become the ocarina of time for the kids who read too much Tom Clancy instead of The Lord of the Rings. Now, if you don't mind me, I have a 1911 to illegally modify, and if the feds don't get me, I'll see you in the next one.
That's right, we're Japanese.